Hey everyone, tonight we journey into the vast steppes of Mongolia to explore the remarkable life of a man whose existence was part survival, part conquest, and entirely misunderstood by most of the settled world, Genghis Khan. The boy who would become the Great Khan, uniting the Mongol tribes and creating the largest contiguous land empire in human history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born sometime around 162, though dates on the Mongol steppes are more suggestions than certainties. The world doesn't keep careful records of nomad births, especially not in the remote highlands of what will one day be called Mongolia. You enter this world not as Genghis Khan, the title lies decades in the future, but as Temujin, named after a Tatar warrior your father had recently defeated and captured. Your birth comes with an omen that the tribal shamans will discuss for years to come. You arrive clutching a blood clot in your tiny fist, dark as coagulated mare's milk, firm as a river stone. The wise women of your tribe exchange meaningful glances. In Mongol tradition, this is a sign that you will become a great warrior, a leader who will spill much blood. Your father, Yesge, chief of the Kiad clan, allows himself a moment of pride. But on the steppes, omens are cheap. Survival is expensive. Your first breath is of thin mountain air, crisp and clean, carrying the scent of grasslands that stretch beyond the horizon. This is your world Mender's sky, rolling hills covered in tough grass, and the constant sound of wind. No walls, no cities, no permanent anything. The Mongol way of life is movement, and you will learn to walk before you learn to sit still. The Jer, or yurt, where you spend your earliest days, is a marvel of portable engineering. Felt walls stretched over a wooden frame, designed to be assembled and dismantled in less than an hour. Your mother, Holland, tends to you here while your father raids, trades, and politic with other tribes. The interior is dim, lit by a central fire that burns dried animal dung, the only fuel available on these treeless plains. The smoke escapes through a hole in the roof that also serves as your window to the eternal sky. Your cradle is made of birch wood, carved by your grandfather's hands, lined with the softest lamb's wool your family can afford. But even as an infant, you're being prepared for a life of hardship. Mongol babies are swaddled tightly, their arms bound to their sides, to teach them endurance from birth. You'll cry, but not too loudly. Noise on the steppes can mean death, attracting predators or enemies. Your mother's lullabies are sung in whispers, ancient songs about horses and heroes, about the eternal blue sky that watches over all Mongols. The first taste of food other than your mother's milk is fermented mare's milk, ear-age given to you on a leather spoon when you're barely old enough to swallow. It's bitter and alcoholic, but it's what Mongol children drink. Cow's milk is for farming peoples, for those who stay in one place. You are learning, even now, that you are different from the settled world. Your earliest memories are of constant motion. By the time you can walk, you're already learning to pack and unpack the Jer, to read the signs of weather in the sky, to understand the moods of horses and sheep. The Mongol tribe follows the grass, moving their herds to new pastures as the seasons change. You toddle alongside the wagons, learning to keep up or be left behind. Your father is often absent, leading raids against rival tribes or hunting in the distant mountains. When he returns, he brings stories of battle, of honor won and lost. of the complex web of alliances and feuds that define Mongol politics. You listen from the shadows, absorbing lessons about loyalty, revenge, and the price of weakness. Your mother fills in the gaps, teaching you the genealogies of the great clans, the proper way to address elders, the rituals that keep the tribe bound together. The steppes are not gentle to children. By age 4, you're expected to help with the herds, to know the difference between a healthy sheep and a sick one, to understand which plants horses prefer and which will poison them. Your playground is vast and dangerous. Wolves hunt in packs, sudden storms can kill the unwary, and raiders from hostile tribes might appear at any moment. You learn to be constantly alert, to trust your instincts, to never assume you're safe. Your first pony is a shaggy, bad-tempered mare named Sartak. She's barely taller than you are, with a coat like dirty felt and a disposition that would make a wolverine seem friendly. But she's yours, and learning to ride her is your first real test of manhood. Mongol children are expected to be competent riders by age 5, and those who can't keep up are left behind, and sometimes literally. The relationship between a Mongol and his horse is sacred, deeper than marriage, more important than blood. Your pony is your legs, your freedom, your life. You sleep beside her, sharing warmth on cold nights. You learn to read her moods, to understand her needs, to work with her rather than against her. When she's hurt, you're hurt. When she's strong, you're strong. This bond will define your entire life. Your diet is simple but nourishing. Mare's milk and mutton, dried meat and fermented cheese, wild onions and berries when they can be found. You learn to go days without eating when necessary, to make a handful of dried meat last a week. Hunger is not your enemy. It's your teacher, showing you how little you actually need to survive. The world you're born into is one of constant struggle and remarkable freedom. The Mongol tribes recognize no kings, no permanent settlements, no walls or boundaries. Authority is earned through strength, wisdom, and the ability to lead men in battle. Your father, Yeskyuge, is chief of the Kiad clan, not because he inherited the position, but because he proved himself capable of holding it. The Mongol social structure is fluid but rigid. At the top are the nobles, the white bone people, who claim descent from the legendary Alan Gua, mother of the Mongol people. Below them are the black bone people, commoners who form the bulk of the tribe. At the bottom are slaves, usually captured in raids or born to captive mothers. But the lines can be crossed. A brave warrior can rise in status, a coward can fall. Nothing is permanent except the eternal blue sky and the bonds of loyalty between sworn brothers. Your education begins early and is entirely practical. You learn to shoot a bow from horseback while riding at full gallop, to track animals across seemingly empty grassland, to read the weather in the behavior of birds. Mathematics is counting sheep and calculating the distance between water sources. Literature is the oral tradition of heroic songs and genealogies passed down through generations. Philosophy is the understanding that the strong survive and the weak feed the wolves. The Mongol religion is shamanism, a belief system that sees spirits in everything: rocks, trees, animals, the wind itself. The greatest spirit is the eternal blue sky, Tengri, who watches over all Mongols and grants victory to those who deserve it. Your family shaman, a withered old woman named Teb Tengri, reads omens in the flight of birds, the patterns of clouds, the way horses hold their ears. She predicts your future in the entrails of sacrificed sheep, though her prophecies are always cryptic enough to be interpreted multiple ways. Religious ceremonies are few but important. The most sacred is the worship of the eternal blue sky, conducted on mountaintops where the earth reaches closest to heaven. Your family makes pilgrimages to these holy places, offering fermented mare's milk and prayers for protection. The shamans enter trances, speaking with the voices of spirits, foretelling the future and advising the living. You watch these rituals with the wide eyes of childhood, absorbing beliefs that will shape your understanding of destiny and divine favor. Marriage among the Mongols is a business arrangement, a way of cementing alliances between clans and ensuring the continuation of bloodlines. Your father has already begun negotiating for your future bride, a girl named Bertie from the Olkunut tribe. You haven't met her yet. She's still a child, and the marriage won't be consummated for years. But the engagement creates bonds between your families that will prove crucial in the years to come. Olkul's the Mongol attitude toward women is complex. They have more freedom than women in the settled civilizations, able to own property, lead troops, and speak in councils. But they're also expected to be tough, to endure hardship without complaint, to fight alongside their men when necessary. Your mother, Holun, exemplifies this ideal. She can deliver a foal, kill a wolf, and negotiate with rival chiefs, all while maintaining the dignity expected of a chief's wife. Your childhood ends abruptly when you're 9 years old. Your father, Yeske, takes you to the camp of the Olkunut tribe to finalize your engagement to Bertie. It's a long journey across the steppes, just the two of you riding side by side, and you treasure these moments of closeness with a father who's usually distant and stern. The Olkunut receive you with the courtesy due to allies, and you meet your future bride for the first time. Bertie is a year older than you, with intelligent eyes and a quiet manner that speaks of inner strength. You like her immediately, though you're too young to understand what marriage will mean. The adults conduct their negotiations while you and Bertie explore the camp together, learning each other's names and sharing childhood stories. According to custom, you're supposed to remain with the Olkunut for a year, working for your future father-in-law and learning the ways of his clan. Your father prepares to leave, but before he goes, he takes you aside for a conversation you'll remember for the rest of your life. Remember, he says, gripping your shoulders with hands made hard by years of warfare, you are the son of Yeske, chief of the Kiad. The blood of great Khans flows in your veins, but blood alone makes no man great. You must prove yourself worthy of that blood, through courage, through wisdom, through the strength of your arm and the loyalty of your followers. He pauses, looking out over the steppes that stretch endlessly in all directions. The world is changing, boy. The Tatars grow strong, the Chinese meddle in our affairs, and the tribes war against each other like dogs fighting over scraps. Someday, a great leader will arise to unite the Mongol people under one banner. Perhaps that leader will be you, but first, you must survive. You nod solemnly, not fully understanding the weight of his words but sensing their importance. He mounts his horse and rides away, growing smaller and smaller against the vast sky until he disappears entirely. You don't know it yet, but you'll never see him alive again. The news comes 3 days later. Your father is dead, poisoned by Tatar's enemies who offered him hospitality and then betrayed the sacred laws of the steppes. The messenger who brings the news is one of your father's trusted retainers, a weathered warrior named Mongolik, who's ridden his horse nearly to death to reach you. Your father is dead, he tells you without preamble. Mongols don't soften bad news. The Tatars invited him to feast with them, and they put poison in his wine. He lived long enough to name you his heir, but the tribe is already scattering. Some have joined other clans, Some have declared themselves independent. Your mother holds the camp with those who remain loyal, but they are few. The world tilts beneath your feet. Your father, the mighty Yesuke, is gone. You're 9 years old, betrothed to a girl you barely know, and suddenly responsible for the survival of your family and the remnants of your tribe. The Olkunut, sensing weakness, quietly suggest that perhaps the engagement should be reconsidered. After all, what use is alliance with a powerless boy? But Bertie's father, Daiseshen, is a man of honor. He provides you with a horse and supplies, and sends you home with his blessing. Come back for my daughter when you're strong enough to protect her, he says. I'll wait. It's a promise that will sustain you through the dark years ahead. Your mother Holan sits in the midst of the remnants of what was once a prosperous clan. A handful of loyal retainers, some old women, and children too young to fend for themselves. The Mongol steppes offer no charity to the weak. Within days of your return, the few remaining warriors begin to drift away, taking their families and their livestock with them. They cite practical reasons: not enough pasture, too many enemies, the need to find stronger protectors for their own children. But you understand the truth. They don't believe a 9-year-old boy can lead them to survival, let alone victory. Soon your family is reduced to its core. Your mother Holan, your younger brothers Kesar, Kechun, and Temugi, your half-brothers Belgote and Bekta, sons of your father's second wife, and a handful of elderly retainers who have nowhere else to go. You're the oldest male, which makes you the clan chief by default. But what's the point of being chief of nothing? Your mother takes charge with the fierce determination of a she-wolf protecting her cubs. We will survive, she tells you all, her voice hard as iron. We are the sons and daughters of Yesuge. We carry the blood of Khans. We will not beg, we will not surrender, and we will not die quietly in the grass. The first winter is brutal. Without the large herds that once provided meat and milk, your family survives on whatever you can hunt, trap, or forage. You learn to catch fish with your bare hands, to dig for roots in the frozen ground, to track small game through snow deeper than you are tall. Your mother teaches you to make snares from horsehair, to find bird eggs in hidden nests, to identify which plants are edible and which will kill you. Hunger becomes your constant companion. You learn to ignore the gnawing pain in your belly, to make a single meal last for days by eating tiny portions. Your younger brothers look to you for leadership, but what can you tell them? That everything will be all right, that father will come back, that the herds will return. You're 9 years old, and you're learning that leadership means making impossible choices with inadequate resources. The Taechud, not content with having stolen your herds, begin to hunt your family for sport. They spread rumors that you're growing dangerous, that you've sworn blood oaths against them, that you're gathering followers to seek revenge. Most of this is nonsense. You're too busy surviving to plot revenge, but the rumors serve their purpose, isolating you further from potential allies. Your precarious freedom ends when you're 13. The Taechud, led by a chief named Targutai, decide that you've become too dangerous to leave alive. Track your family to a winter camp in the mountains and attack at dawn, when the cold makes movement difficult and the snow muffles sound. You wake to the sound of horses' hooves and men's voices, harsh and triumphant. Led. Your mother is shouting orders, your brothers are crying, and you know instantly that your years of hiding are over. You could try to run. The mountains offer hiding places, and you know the terrain better than your enemies. But running means abandoning your family, and that's not an option. Instead, you grab your bow and position yourself between the attackers and your mother's ger. You're still more boy than man. But you've been hunting and fighting for survival for 4 years. Your arrows find their marks, and 2 Tae-Chiud warriors fall before the others overwhelm you through sheer numbers. They bind your hands with leather strips and load you onto a horse like a sack of grain. As you're carried away, you see your mother standing in the doorway of the jail, her face carved from stone, watching her eldest son disappear into captivity. She doesn't cry or plead. She simply stands there memorizing the faces of your captors, promising vengeance with her eyes. The Tae-Chiud camp is large and prosperous, built around a core of permanent shelters that speak of wealth and stability. Your captors are proud of their prize, the son of Yesuge, heir to the Kied clan, finally brought low. They parade you through the camp like a trophy, allowing everyone to see that the last threat to their dominance has been eliminated. Your prison is a kangi, a wooden board that locks around your neck, heavy enough to make movement difficult and impossible to remove without help. It's a humiliation as much as a restraint, marking you as a criminal and a captive. You're given just enough food to keep you alive and just enough freedom to serve as an example to anyone who might consider opposing the Tae-Chiud. But captivity teaches you lessons that freedom never could. You learn patience, the ability to wait for the right moment without losing hope. You learn to read people, to understand who can be trusted and who will betray you for a handful of dried meat. You learn that survival sometimes requires swallowing your pride and biding your time. The guards grow careless after a few months. You're just a boy, after all, weak from poor food and constant humiliation. They don't notice that you've been working on the leather bindings that hold the kangu together, using a sharp stone to fray the cords a little more each day. They don't realize that you've been studying their routines, learning when they're drunk, when they're distracted, when they're vulnerable. Your chance comes during the summer festival, when the entire camp is celebrating with fermented mare's milk and roasted sheep. The guards are drunk, the night is dark, and the sound of singing and laughter covers any noise you might make. You slip away from the camp like a shadow, the kangu still around your neck, but no longer connected to the stake that held you prisoner. The wooden collar is still a problem. It's too heavy to run with, too distinctive to hide. But you've planned for this. At a river crossing 2 miles from the camp, you smash the kangu against a rock until it breaks apart. The impact sends shockwaves through your skull, but you're free. Now comes the hard part, staying free. The Tae-Chiud will discover your escape with the dawn, and they'll track you with the best hunters on the steppes. You need distance, speed, and most importantly, you need allies. Running blindly into the wilderness will only delay your recapture. Instead, you head for the camp of a man named Sorgan Shira, a minor chief who served under your father. It's a desperate gamble. He might turn you in for the reward the Tae-Chiud will offer, or he might simply refuse to get involved. But he's your only hope. You reach his camp in the early morning, exhausted and stumbling. Sorgan Shira finds you collapsed by his horse herd, recognizes you despite your ragged appearance, and makes a decision that will change both your lives. Instead of betraying you, he hides you in a cart of wool and lies to the Tae-Chiud search parties that arrive later that day. I've seen no one, he tells them calmly, but if I do, I'll certainly let you know. The searchers are suspicious, but not suspicious enough to search every cart in the camp. They move on, and you survive another day. For 3 days you hide in Sorgan Shira's camp while the search continues. He brings you food and water, along with news of the hunt. The Tae-Chiud have offered a substantial reward for your capture. The search parties are combing the steppes, but they're looking for a boy on foot, not one hidden in a trader's cart. When the search finally moves on, Sorghum Shearer provides you with a horse, supplies and advice. Find your family, he says. The steps are changing, and there may be a place for a leader who remembers his friends. He pauses, studying your face. You've grown up in captivity, boy. You went in as a child, and you're coming out as a man. Use that. You find your family's camp in the Kente Mountains, hidden in a valley that offers protection from the wind and concealment from enemies. Your mother sees you coming from a mile away, but when you dismount, she holds you with a strength that speaks of years of worry and determination. Your brothers have grown in your absence, survived without you, but they've also been waiting for you. Your return means the family is complete again, ready to reclaim its place in the world. But the world has changed in your absence. The Taishiud have grown stronger, absorbing smaller clans and expanding their territory. The Merkits, another powerful tribe, have begun raiding deeper into traditional Mongol lands. Most importantly, new alliances have formed among the tribes, and your family's old position has been filled by others. Your mother has used the years of your captivity wisely. She's maintained contact with your father's old allies, and most importantly, she's preserved the knowledge of your bloodline and your legitimate claim to leadership. She's also negotiated with Dai Sechen, Bertie's father, to keep your engagement alive, despite your family's reduced circumstances. It's time, she tells you. You're old enough now, and we need allies. You marry the girl, strengthen the bond with her clan, and begin building the force that will restore our fortunes. It's practical advice, but it also excites you. You've thought about Bertie often during your captivity, wondering if she's grown as much as you have, if she still remembers the shy boy who visited her family's camp. The journey to the Alkanut camp is a test of your new status. You travel with a small party, your brothers, a few loyal retainers, and a modest collection of gifts that represents everything your family can afford. It's not the grand procession that should accompany a chief's son, but it's enough to show that you're still alive and still worthy of respect. Dai Sechen receives you with the courtesy due to an old alliance, but you can see him evaluating your worth. You're no longer the boy who left his camp years ago, but you're also not yet the man who can guarantee his daughter's safety and prosperity. The negotiation is delicate, requiring you to project strength without overplaying your hand. Bertie herself resolves the question. She's grown into a beautiful young woman, but more importantly, she's grown into someone with opinions of her own. She chooses you, not because her father commands it, but because she sees something in you that others miss. I remember the boy who wasn't afraid to explore a strange camp, she tells you. I want to meet the man he's become. Your wedding to Bertie is a modest affair by Mongol standards, but it feels like a coronation. The ceremony takes place in the spring, when the grass is green and the horses are fat, when the world feels full of possibilities. The two families gather in a sacred grove, and the shamans perform the ancient rituals that bind not just two people but two bloodlines. You exchange the traditional vows, promising to be each other's strength in war and comfort in peace. But more importantly, you're creating an alliance that gives your family its first real foundation in years. The Alkanut aren't the most powerful tribe on the steppes, but they're honorable, they're skilled warriors, and they're now your kinsmen. Bertie comes to your family's camp with her own retinue, Missa's servants, horses, and most importantly, a dowry that includes a magnificent sable coat that once belonged to her grandfather. It's the finest thing your family has owned in years, and it will play a crucial role in your future. Your new wife adapts quickly to the hardships of your reduced circumstances. She works alongside your mother, helps train your younger brothers, and never complains about the simple food and rough accommodations. But she also brings something your family has lacked for years: hope. Her presence is a sign that your fortunes are changing. But the family of Yesugei is not finished. The early months of your marriage are among the happiest of your life. You're learning to be a husband while still figuring out how to be a man. Bertie is patient with your inexperience, wise enough to offer advice without making you feel diminished. Together you begin to plan for a future that extends beyond mere survival. But happiness on the steps is always temporary. Your marriage to Bertie has created new enemies among those who preferred your family weak and isolated. The Taetude are angry that you've escaped their control and formed an alliance. The Mertits are suspicious of any strengthening of Mongol power, and other ambitious young men see your rising status as a threat to their own plans. It's a relatively minor incident, the few horses stolen, no one killed. But it's a test of your ability to protect your property and your people. Your response will determine whether you're seen as a leader worth following or a target worth attacking. You choose to pursue the thieves, taking Kesar and a handful of volunteers on a week-long hunt across the steppes. It's dangerous. You're outnumbered, operating in unfamiliar territory, and chasing men who have nothing to lose. But it's also necessary. A leader who allows his property to be stolen will soon find himself with nothing left to steal. The pursuit teaches you valuable lessons about leadership, strategy, and the psychology of warfare. You learn to read tracks, to anticipate your enemy's movements, to coordinate attacks with limited resources. Most importantly, you learn that sometimes the threat of violence is more effective than violence itself. When you finally corner the thieves, they surrender without a fight, impressed by your determination and intimidated by your reputation. Word of your successful pursuit spreads across the steppes, carried by traders, shamans, and wandering warriors. Amon's story grows in the telling, and number of thieves increases. The distance of the chase expands, and your tactical brilliance becomes the stuff of legend. But the core truth remains. Temujin, son of Yesugei, is no longer a powerless boy. He's a man who keeps his word and protects his own. The first warriors to join your banner are men with nowhere else to go, of younger sons of minor chiefs, refugees from defeated clans, ambitious fighters, looking for a leader who might offer them a chance at glory. D or Pi. D. They're not much, but they're loyal, and they're willing to fight for the promise of better times ahead. Your first real test as a leader comes when you have to decide how to treat these followers. Mongol tradition gives a chief absolute authority over his warriors, but it also demands that he share the rewards of victory and the hardships of defeat. You establish a simple principle: loyalty will be rewarded, but betrayal will be punished without mercy. The principle is tested when one of your warriors is caught stealing from the common supplies. Traditional punishment would be death, but the man is young and desperate, and his family is starving. You face your first real leadership dilemma: uphold the law and maintain discipline, or show mercy and risk being seen as weak. You choose a middle path, one that will become characteristic of your leadership style. The thief is punished, stripped of his weapons, and forced to serve as a servant for a year, but his family is fed from your personal stores. It's a solution that satisfies the demands of justice, while demonstrating that you care about the welfare of your people. Your growing reputation attracts the attention of Jamuka, your childhood friend and blood brother. He's become a powerful leader in his own right, uniting several clans under his banner and styling himself as a guardian of traditional Mongol values. His arrival at your camp is both a blessing and a curse. His support legitimizes your claim to leadership, but his presence also creates the potential for conflict. The reunion with Jamuka is emotional and complex. You shared the hardships of childhood, swore oaths of eternal brotherhood, and dreamed together of great deeds. But you've both changed during your years apart. He's become charismatic and political, skilled at making allies and managing coalitions. You've become harder and more focused, shaped by captivity and the struggle for survival. For a time, the alliance works well. Your combined forces are strong enough to deter most enemies, and your complementary skills make you an effective team. Jamaica handles the politics and diplomacy, while you focus on military training and strategic planning. Together you begin to unite the scattered Mongol tribes under a common banner. But the seeds of future conflict are already present. Jamaica believes in traditional Mongol democracy, where chiefs are elected and decisions are made by consensus. You're beginning to believe in something different. A vision of absolute authority concentrated in a single leader who can unite the tribes through strength and discipline. The philosophical differences seem minor at first, but they will eventually tear your friendship apart. Your most important early alliance comes through a stroke of diplomatic genius orchestrated by your mother. The magnificent sable coat that came as part of Bertie's dowry becomes the key to forging a relationship with Togrul, Khan of the Keratis, one of the most powerful leaders on the steppes. Togrul, also known as Onkan, had been your father's sworn brother and ally. But alliances on the steppes are personal, and they died with Yesuge. Approaching Togrul requires delicate negotiation. You need to remind him of old loyalties without appearing to take them for granted, to offer him something valuable while not seeming desperate. The sable coat is perfect for this purpose. It's valuable enough to show respect, traditional enough to honor old customs, and personal enough to invoke the memory of your father. When you present it to Togrul, along with a carefully worded speech about renewing family bonds, you're offering him both a gift and an opportunity. Togrul is old, experienced, and suspicious of young warriors with grand ambitions, but he's also practical. Your growing reputation makes you potentially valuable as an ally, and the cost of supporting you is relatively low. Togrul is old, experienced, and suspicious of young warriors with grand ambition. He agrees to recognize you as his spiritual son, a relationship that places you under his protection while giving him a claim on your future loyalty. The alliance with Togrul transforms your position on the steppes. You're no longer just another minor chief struggling for survival. You're now the protege of one of the most powerful Khans in Mongolia. Other tribes begin to take you seriously, and warriors start joining your banner in significant numbers. But the relationship with Togrul is complex and potentially dangerous. He's supporting you because he believes you'll be useful to him, not because he cares about your personal welfare. If you become too powerful, he'll see you as a threat. If you become too weak, he'll abandon you. Managing this relationship requires constant attention and careful calculation. Your first joint operation with Togrul is a raid against the Merkits, who have been attacking Karai territory. It's a chance to prove your worth as a military leader while also blooding your warriors in real combat. The campaign is successful. The Merkits are defeated, their herds captured, and their power reduced. But the victory also reveals the complexity of steppe politics. The defeated Merkits don't simply disappear. Some flee to other tribes, carrying tales of your growing power and seeking allies for future revenge. Others submit to your authority, but their loyalty is questionable. A few join your forces, but they must be watched carefully to ensure they don't sabotage your efforts from within. Your growing power inevitably attracts enemies, and the Merkits are among the most dangerous. They're a large warlike tribe with a long history of conflict with the Mongols. and they see your alliance with Togrul as a direct threat to their interests. Their response is swift and devastating. The attack comes at dawn, when your camp is still quiet and your warriors are scattered. 300 Merkit warriors, led by a chief named Chilidu, sweep down on your position like a thunderbolt. Your sentries give what warning they can, but there's barely time to grab weapons before the enemy is among your geysers. The battle is chaotic and desperate. You're outnumbered 3-1, and your warriors are fighting for their lives rather than for victory. Your primary goal is not to win, but to survive, to keep your family alive and your core followers intact. It's a lesson in the harsh realities of steppe warfare. Sometimes the best strategy is simply to live to fight another day. In the confusion of the fighting, disaster strikes. Berta is captured, along with several other women and children. You watch helplessly as she's thrown across a Merkit saddle and carried away, her fate uncertain. The image burns itself into your memory. Your wife, your partner, your anchor to stability, disappearing into the dust of enemy hooves. The Merkits withdraw as quickly as they came, taking their captives and much of your livestock. You're left with a decimated camp, demoralized followers, and the knowledge that your enemies have struck at the heart of your family. The raid is both a military defeat and a personal catastrophe, testing your leadership and your resolve. Your immediate instinct is to pursue the raiders, to rescue Berta regardless of the cost. But your advisors counsel patience. You're wounded, your forces are scattered, and a hasty pursuit would likely result in your death and the destruction of your remaining followers. The wise course is to rebuild your strength and plan a proper campaign. But wisdom conflicts with honor, and both conflict with love. Berta isn't just your wife. Nietzsche's a political alliance, a personal relationship, and a symbol of your ability to protect your people. Failing to rescue her would mark you as a leader who abandons his responsibilities when they become dangerous. The decision tears at you for days. You pace the ruins of your camp, weighing options that all seem to lead to disaster. Your mother offers quiet counsel, reminding you that dead heroes rescue no one. Your brothers pledge their support regardless of your choice, but ultimately the decision is yours alone. You choose love over wisdom, honor over safety. Within a week you've gathered every warrior you can find and begun planning the most audacious rescue attempt in recent steppe history. It's a desperate gamble, but it's also a defining moment. The man who emerges from this crisis will be fundamentally different from the boy who entered it. The campaign to rescue Bertie becomes the stuff of legend, though the reality is more complex than the songs suggest. You're not leading a mighty army but a desperate collection of volunteers, many of whom are motivated more by the promise of plunder than by loyalty to your cause. Your total force numbers fewer than 200 men, facing a Merkit tribe that can field 3 times that number. But you have advantages that numbers can't measure. You know the terrain, having hunted and hidden in these mountains for years. You have the element of surprise, since the Merkits assume you're too weak to mount a serious rescue attempt. Most importantly, you have allies who understand the politics of the situation. Jamaica joins your campaign with 50 of his best warriors, honoring the bonds of brotherhood despite the risks. More surprisingly, Togrul provides 2 Tumans, 20,000 warriors, turning your desperate rescue into a major military operation. The old Khan's motives are complex, but his support transforms your chances from hopeless to merely dangerous. The combined army moves quickly across the steppes, covering ground that would normally take weeks in a matter of days. You're learning to coordinate multiple forces, to manage supply lines, and to maintain discipline among warriors from different tribes. These skills will serve you well in future campaigns, but for now, your focus is entirely on one objective: bringing Bertie home. The Merkit camp is located near the shores of Lake Baikal, in a valley that offers good grazing but limited escape routes. Your scouts report that the tribe is celebrating recent victories, confident in their security and careless about their defenses. It's the kind of overconfidence that creates opportunities for those bold enough to seize them. The attack comes at dawn, coordinated from 3 directions to prevent escape. Your forces sweep down on the sleeping camp like a winter storm, overwhelming the scattered resistance before it can organize. The Merkits, caught completely off guard, break and flee in all directions. Within hours, what had been a prosperous tribe is reduced to scattered refugees hiding in the forests. But finding Bertie in the chaos proves more difficult than winning the battle. The Merkit camp is large, and many of the captives have been distributed among various families. You search frantically through burning gers and abandoned campsites, calling her name, following every lead, growing more desperate with each passing hour. Finally, you hear her voice calling your name from a distant hilltop. She's standing beside a cart, still wearing the clothes she was captured in, but alive and apparently unharmed. The relief is so overwhelming that you nearly fall from your horse. She runs to meet you, and for a moment the war around you fades away. The reunion is emotional but brief. You have a battle to finish, and an army to manage. Bertie tells you quickly what happened. Nishi was claimed by a Merkit chief as a wife, but the marriage was never consummated due to ongoing disputes about her status. She's been treated as a valuable hostage rather than a slave, which explains her relatively good condition. But her capture and rescue have consequences that extend far beyond your personal happiness. The destruction of the Merkit camp sends shockwaves across the steppes, establishing your reputation as a leader who protects his own, regardless of the cost. Warriors begin flocking to your banner, drawn by stories of your loyalty and your military success. The successful rescue of Bertie marks the beginning of your transformation from tribal chief to something approaching a Khan. Your reputation spreads across the steppes, attracting followers who see you as a rising power worth supporting. But success also brings new challenges, particularly in your relationship with Jammu Khan. During the campaign, differences in your leadership styles become increasingly apparent. Jammu Khan leads through consensus and charisma, consulting with his warriors and making decisions collectively. You lead through decisive action and clear command, expecting obedience and rewarding competence. Both styles work, but they're fundamentally incompatible. The philosophical differences become personal when your followers begin to compare the two approaches. Some of Jammu Khan's warriors start drifting to your banner, attracted by your direct leadership style and your growing reputation. Some of your supporters question whether you need to maintain the alliance, since you're now strong enough to operate independently. The break comes over a seemingly minor incident. During a joint hunting expedition, arguments arise about the distribution of game. Jammu Khan's followers claim a larger share based on their numbers, while yours argue for equal distribution based on contribution. The dispute escalates until harsh words are exchanged, and both sides begin reaching for weapons. You manage to defuse the immediate crisis, but the damage is done. After bonds of brotherhood that once held your alliance together have been strained to the breaking point. That night, around separate campfires, both sides discuss the growing tensions and the impossibility of maintaining the partnership. The final confrontation comes when Jammu Khan's followers openly challenge your authority, questioning your decisions and mocking your leadership style. You respond with controlled anger, making it clear that such behavior will not be tolerated. The exchange is witnessed by warriors from both sides, turning a private dispute into a public test of strength. Jamuka, faced with the choice between supporting you or his own followers, chooses his men. The decision is understandable, but devastating. Your sworn brother, your closest friend, your partner in countless adventures, becomes your enemy in a single moment. The boy who shared your childhood dreams is now the man who stands between you and your adult ambitions. The split is handled with the formal courtesy that such occasions demand. Oaths of brotherhood are dissolved, alliances are terminated, and followers are given the choice of which leader to support. About half of the combined force chooses to follow you, while the rest remain loyal to Jamuka. It's a painful division, but it's also a necessary one. The separation creates two rival power centers on the steppes, each claiming to represent the true path to Mongol unity. Jamuka styles himself as the defender of traditional values and democratic decision-making. You begin to articulate a vision of absolute authority and disciplined hierarchy. The stage is set for a conflict that will determine the future of the Mongol people. With Jamuka's departure, you're free to implement your vision of leadership without compromise. Your first major decision is to formally claim the title of Khan, not just of your own tribe, but of all Mongols who choose to follow you. It's a bold step, one that challenges the traditional system of tribal autonomy and collective decision-making. The ceremony takes place at a great gathering of your followers, held in a sacred grove, where the spirits of your ancestors are said to dwell. Shamans conduct the ancient rituals, calling upon the eternal blue sky to witness and bless your elevation. Your supporters chant your name and pledge their loyalty, creating a moment of unity that transcends tribal boundaries. But claiming the title of Khan is easier than exercising its authority. You now rule over a diverse collection of tribes, each with its own customs, loyalties, and internal politics. Your challenge is to forge these disparate groups into a unified force, without destroying the traditions that define their identities. Your solution is to create a new system that combines traditional Mongol values with innovative organizational structures. You establish the decimal system, organizing your army into units of 10, 100,000 and 10,000 warriors. Each unit is commanded by a leader chosen for competence rather than birth, creating opportunities for advancement based on merit. The meritocracy you establish is revolutionary for its time. In traditional Mongol society, leadership positions are inherited or granted based on family connections. Your system promotes talented individuals regardless of their background, creating a dynamic where ability matters more than ancestry. It's a change that attracts capable followers while threatening established elites. You also implement a code of laws that applies equally to all your followers, regardless of their tribal origin. The laws are simple but comprehensive, covering everything from military discipline to the treatment of captives. Most importantly, they establish the principle that justice comes from the Khan's authority, not from tribal customs or personal relationships. The new legal system is tested when you're forced to deal with a dispute between two of your senior commanders. The case involves theft, adultery, and accusations of cowardice. Exactly the kind of complex situation that traditional tribal law handles through lengthy negotiations and compensation payments. Your solution is swift and decisive. The guilty party is executed, the innocent party is compensated, and the case is closed. The execution sends shockwaves through your followers, but it also establishes a crucial precedent. Your authority is real, your laws are binding, and your justice is impartial. Warriors begin to understand that serving under your banner means accepting a new way of life, one that offers opportunities for advancement, but demands absolute loyalty in return. The conflict with Jamuka is inevitable, but it unfolds slowly, like a storm building on the horizon. For months, both sides engage in a cold war of raids, diplomatic maneuvering, and attempts to win over neutral tribes. Each victory by one side prompts a response from the other, creating a cycle of escalation that draws in more and more of the steppe tribes. The first major battle occurs at Dalan Bolshut, where your forces clash with Jamaicas in a traditional steppe engagement. The battle is fierce but inconclusive, with both sides claiming victory and withdrawing to lick their wounds. But the real significance of the encounter is what it reveals about the changing nature of Mongol warfare. Your army fights with the discipline and coordination that your organizational reforms have created. Units maneuver in formation, follow orders without question, and maintain their cohesion even under pressure. Jamaica's forces, organized along traditional lines, fight with individual courage but lack the systematic coordination that wins large battles. The tactical advantage you demonstrate at Dalan Bolshut attracts attention from across the steppes. Warriors who might have remained neutral begin to see you as the more effective leader, the one more likely to achieve victory in the long run. Defections from Jamaica's camp accelerate, strengthening your position while weakening his. But Jamaica is not finished. He responds to his military setbacks by forming a grand alliance of tribes opposed to your rule. The coalition includes traditional enemies of the Mongols, nomadic peoples who fear your growing power, and even some Chinese allies who prefer a divided steppe to a unified one. It's a formidable force, united by fear of your ambitions. The final confrontation comes at the Battle of Cuitin, or where your reorganized army faces the largest coalition ever assembled against a single Mongol leader. The odds are daunting. You're outnumbered more than 2 to 1, facing enemies who are fighting for their survival. But you have advantages that numbers can't measure: better organization, superior discipline, and the confidence that comes from a string of victories. The battle itself is a masterpiece of tactical innovation. You use the traditional Mongol feigned retreat to draw the enemy into a trap, then employ coordinated charges from multiple directions to break their formation. Your decimal organization allows you to maneuver large forces with precision, while your merit-based command system ensures that orders are executed competently. The victory at Cuitin is decisive. Jamaica's coalition is shattered, its leaders killed or scattered, and its survivors either join your forces or flee to distant lands. Your former blood brother escapes the battlefield, but his power is broken. You've won more than a military victory. You've established yourself as the dominant power on the Mongol steppes. The defeat of Jamaica's coalition marks the beginning of your final campaign to unite all Mongol tribes under your authority. Over the next few years, you systematically eliminate or absorb the remaining independent tribes, using a combination of military force, political maneuvering, and strategic marriages to build an empire that spans the entire steppe. Some tribes submit voluntarily, recognizing the inevitability of your victory and hoping to preserve their autonomy within your growing empire. Others resist to the end, forcing you to conduct bloody campaigns that leave lasting scars on the steppe landscape. Each conquest teaches you new lessons about the complexities of ruling diverse peoples with different traditions and loyalties. Your treatment of conquered tribes establishes patterns that will define your later empire. Those who submit peacefully are integrated into your forces with their traditional structures largely intact. Those who resist are broken completely, their leaders executed, and their followers redistributed among loyal tribes. It's a harsh but effective system that creates strong incentives for cooperation. The Tatars, the tribe that poisoned your father, receive special attention. When you finally corner them in their mountain strongholds, you implement a policy of systematic extermination that shocks even your own followers. Every Tatar male taller than a cartwheel is killed, ensuring that the tribe can never again threaten Mongol security. It's a brutal decision, but one that sends a clear message about the consequences of opposing you. The campaign against the Tatars also demonstrates your growing sophistication as a military leader. You use siege warfare, psychological pressure, and coordinated attacks by multiple columns to achieve victory. Your army has evolved from a collection of tribal warriors into a professional military force, capable of conducting complex operations across vast distances. The final holdout is the Naiman tribe, led by a chief named Tayang Khan, who claims to be the rightful ruler of all steppe peoples. The Naiman are powerful and well-organized, with Chinese advisors and advanced military technology. They represent the last serious challenge to your authority, and defeating them will require everything you've learned about warfare and leadership. The campaign against the Naiman is your most challenging to date. They're entrenched in strong positions, supported by allies and led by competent commanders who understand your tactical methods. The war drags on for months, testing your resources and your followers' patience. But you persist, gradually wearing down their resistance through a combination of direct assault and strategic maneuvering. The final battle occurs at the Khangai Mountains, where Tayang Khan makes his last stand with the remnants of his forces. The engagement is fierce and personal, with both sides understanding that the outcome will determine the future of the steppes. Your victory is complete and decisive, eliminating the last organized resistance to your rule. With the Mongol tribes finally united under your authority, you convene a great Kurultai Maisa traditional assembly of chiefs and nobles to formalize your position as Great Khan of all Mongols. The gathering takes place in 1206, at a sacred site where the spirits of your ancestors are said to dwell. It's a moment that transforms you from a tribal leader into an emperor. The Kurultai is attended by representatives from every tribe in your domain, arcane and spectacle that impresses even the most skeptical observers. Thousands of warriors, hundreds of chiefs, and dozens of shamans gather to witness your elevation. Chiwes and Duweza, Halfkane and Senjid does Taser, 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 Halfkane and Senjid does Taser. The ceremony combines ancient traditions with innovations that reflect your vision of unified Mongol identity. The shamans perform the ritual of divine investiture, calling upon the eternal blue sky to recognize your authority and grant you the mandate of heaven. They proclaim that you are chosen by Tengri himself to rule over all peoples under the sky, giving your political power a religious foundation that transcends tribal loyalties. But the religious ceremony is accompanied by practical reforms that restructure Mongol society. You announce the formal adoption of the decimal military system, the establishment of a unified legal code, and the creation of new administrative positions that will help govern your expanding empire. The changes are revolutionary, but they're presented as natural extensions of traditional Mongol values. Your most important innovation is the creation of the Kesig, an elite guard drawn from the sons of your subordinate chiefs. Officially, it's an honor guard that protects the Great Khan and serves as a symbol of unity. In reality, it's a system of noble hostages that ensures the loyalty of your followers while providing their children with education in your methods and values. The Kesig becomes the training ground for the next generation of Mongol leaders, young men who learn statecraft, military tactics, and imperial administration under your direct supervision. They're taught to think beyond tribal boundaries, to see themselves as Mongols first and members of particular clans second. It's a long-term investment in the future of your empire. The Kurultai also addresses the question of succession, establishing principles that will govern the transfer of power after your death. You name your third son Ogedei as your heir, passing over your eldest son Jochi due to questions about his parentage. It's a decision that creates family tensions but ensures that the empire will be ruled by your most capable son. The ceremony concludes with oaths of loyalty from all assembled chiefs, creating a moment of unity that transcends traditional tribal divisions. For the first time in Mongol history, all the steppe tribes are united under a single leader, ready to turn their attention from internal conflicts to external conquests. As Great Khan of the Mongols, you now command a military force unlike anything the world has seen. Your army is disciplined, mobile, and motivated by a vision of conquest that extends far beyond the steppes. But before you can begin external campaigns, you must complete the transformation of Mongol society from a collection of tribes into a unified nation. Your first priority is establishing a permanent capital at Karakoram, a city that will serve as the administrative center of your growing empire. The choice of location is strategic niche. It's centrally located, easily defensible, and positioned to control the major trade routes that cross the steppes. The city's construction becomes a symbol of your commitment to creating something permanent and lasting. The capital is designed to accommodate the diverse peoples who now serve in your administration. Mongol nobles occupy the central districts, but there are also quarters for Chinese bureaucrats, Muslim merchants, and Christian craftsmen. The city becomes a microcosm of the multi-ethnic empire you're building, a place where different cultures can coexist under Mongol authority. Your administrative reforms extend beyond military organization to encompass trade, law, and religion. You establish the first postal system on the steppes, creating a network of stations that allows for rapid communication across vast distances. The system becomes crucial for maintaining control over your expanding territories and coordinating military campaigns. The legal code you promulgate, known as the Yasa, establishes uniform standards of justice that apply to all your subjects, regardless of their ethnic or religious background. The code is harsh but fair, emphasizing the importance of loyalty, discipline, and merit over traditional privileges. It creates a framework for governing diverse peoples with different customs and beliefs. Your religious policies are particularly innovative. Rather than imposing a single faith on your diverse subjects, you practice religious tolerance, allowing different communities to maintain their traditional beliefs while requiring political loyalty to your authority. This policy proves crucial for maintaining stability in your multi-ethnic empire. The economic foundations of your empire are built on trade and tribute rather than agriculture. You encourage merchants, protect trade routes, and establish standardized weights and measures that facilitate commerce across your domains. The steppes, long regarded as a barrier to trade, become a bridge connecting the civilized world's major commercial centers. But your ultimate vision extends far beyond the steppes. You've begun to dream of world conquest, of an empire that encompasses all the lands under the eternal blue sky. The settled civilizations that surround the steppes, Nina, Central Asia, Persia, and beyond, are no longer distant neighbors, but potential targets for conquest. Your first major external campaign targets the Western Jana Kingdom, a Chinese state that controls the Silk Road trade routes and has traditionally dominated the steppe tribes through a combination of military force and economic pressure. The campaign serves multiple purposes. It tests your reformed army against a settled civilization, provides valuable plunder for your followers, and eliminates a potential threat to your southern borders. The war against Western Jana reveals the effectiveness of your military reforms. Your cavalry proves superior to Chinese infantry. Your siege techniques overcome fortified cities, and your organizational systems allow you to maintain armies in the field for extended periods. The campaign is successful, but it also teaches you valuable lessons about the challenges of conquering and governing settled populations. Encouraged by your success against Western Jian, you turn your attention to the Jin dynasty, the Jurchen rulers of northern China. This is a far more ambitious target. The Jin control vast territories, command large armies, and possess sophisticated military technology. The campaign will test everything you've learned about warfare, leadership, and imperial administration. The invasion of Jin territory begins with a series of lightning raids that demonstrate your army's mobility and striking power. Your forces cross the Great Wall at multiple points, penetrating deep into Chinese territory before defenders can respond. Holes. The psychological impact is enormous. The seemingly impregnable barrier that has protected China for centuries proves useless against your reformed military. The siege of Beijing becomes the defining moment of the campaign. The city is massive, heavily fortified, and defended by the best troops the Jin can muster. Your forces, accustomed to rapid movement and open-field battles, must adapt to the slow, methodical warfare required to capture a major fortification. The siege lasts for months, testing your army's discipline and your own strategic patience. A barbarian leader from the steppes has captured one of the world's greatest cities, demonstrating that the age of nomadic weakness is over. Your victory attracts attention from distant rulers who begin to recalculate their relationships with the steppe peoples. But conquering Chinese territory is easier than governing it. The sedentary populations have different customs, different economic systems, and different expectations of government. Your traditional Mongol methods of rule must be adapted to accommodate these differences, creating challenges that test your administrative skills as much as your military abilities. Your next major campaign takes you westward against the Khwarezmian Empire that controls much of Central Asia and Persia. The war begins as a commercial dispute. Khwarezmian authorities massacre a Mongol trade caravan, killing your merchants and confiscating their goods. Your response is swift and devastating, demonstrating that attacks on Mongol commerce will be met with overwhelming force. The Khwarezmian campaign becomes the largest military operation you've ever undertaken. Your army, now numbering in the hundreds of thousands, crosses the steppes and descends on the unsuspecting cities of Central Asia like a natural disaster. The speed and scale of your advance catches defenders completely off guard, allowing you to achieve victory after victory with minimal losses. The siege of Samarkand showcases your evolved military techniques. Your engineers, now including Chinese and Muslim specialists, construct sophisticated siege engines that can breach even the strongest fortifications. Your psychological warfare tactics, spreading terror through reports of massacre and destruction, often cause cities to surrender without fighting. The capture of Bukhara provides an opportunity to demonstrate your religious tolerance and political sophistication. You spare the city's inhabitants, protect its scholars and craftsmen, and allow its religious leaders to continue their practices. But you also make clear that such mercy depends on complete submission to your authority. The pursuit of Khwarezmshah across his crumbling empire becomes an epic chase that spans thousands of miles. Your forces divide into multiple columns, each operating independently but coordinating their movements to trap the fleeing ruler. The campaign demonstrates your army's ability to conduct complex operations across vast distances while maintaining discipline and effectiveness. The destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire establishes your reputation as a world conqueror. Cities from Europe to India begin sending tribute and ambassadors, hoping to avoid the fate of those who resisted your advance. Your empire now spans from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, making you the ruler of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. As you enter your 60s, the constant campaigning begins to take its toll. Your body, hardened by decades of warfare and steppe living, starts to show signs of age, but your mind remains sharp, and your strategic vision continues to expand. You begin planning campaigns that will extend your empire even further into Europe, India, and the southern reaches of China. The administrative challenges of governing such a vast empire require new approaches to leadership. You increasingly rely on your sons and trusted generals to command distant campaigns while you focus on strategic planning and imperial administration. The system of delegation you establish becomes a model for future Mongol rulers. Your relationship with your sons becomes increasingly complex as they mature into capable leaders with their own ambitions. Jochi, your eldest, commands the Western territories, but maintains a careful distance from your court. Chagatai proves to be an excellent military commander but lacks the political skills needed for succession. Uldi, your chosen heir, demonstrates the combination of military ability and administrative competence that empire building requires. The question of succession dominates your later years. You've created an empire that spans continents, but you're also aware that such vast territories are difficult to govern from a single center. Your solution is to divide the empire among your sons while maintaining overall unity under the great Khan's authority. It's a compromise that satisfies immediate needs while creating potential for future conflicts. Your final campaign against the Tangut kingdom becomes a race against time. You're visibly aging, your health is declining, and your enemies are beginning to sense weakness. The campaign is successful, but it drains your remaining strength. You're forced to confront the reality that even the great Khan is mortal. The preparation for your death becomes as carefully planned as any military campaign. You finalize the succession arrangements, ensuring that Ogedei will inherit not just your title but also the administrative systems needed to govern effectively. You also make arrangements for your burial, specifying that your grave should be hidden to prevent enemies from desecrating it. Your death, when it comes, is kept secret for months to prevent rebellions and ensure a smooth transition of power. The empire you've built is strong enough to survive your passing, but it will never again be ruled by a single individual with your combination of military genius, political vision, and personal charisma. The empire you've created extends from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, encompassing more territory than any previous conqueror has controlled. Your military innovations hits the decimal system, merit-based promotion, coordinated tactics, revolutionize warfare, and influence military thinking for centuries to come. Your administrative reforms create the foundation for governing multi-ethnic empires that will endure long after your death. But your legacy extends beyond military conquest and political organization. You fundamentally changed the relationship between nomadic and settled peoples, proving that steppe societies can not only compete with, but dominate the great civilizations of the world. Your success inspires other nomadic leaders and creates a new model for empire building that emphasizes mobility, adaptability, and merit over tradition and birth. Cultural impact of your conquests is equally significant. By connecting East and West through trade and communication, you create the first truly global empire. Ideas, technologies, and artistic styles spread across your domains, creating cultural exchanges that enrich all the peoples under your rule. The Pax Mongolica becomes a period of unprecedented cultural and economic development. Your religious tolerance establishes a new model for governing diverse populations. By allowing different faiths to coexist under your authority, you create a framework for religious pluralism that influences later empires. Your court becomes a center of theological debate and cultural exchange, where Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and traditional shamans can discuss their beliefs without fear of persecution. The trade networks you establish and protect become the foundation for the first global economy. The Silk Road reaches its peak under your rule, carrying not just goods but ideas, technologies, and cultural practices across the known world. Your empire becomes the bridge that connects the isolated civilizations of the medieval world. Your legal code, the Yasar, influences legal development across Eurasia. Its emphasis on merit, loyalty, and uniform justice creates new standards for governance that outlast your empire. The principle that law should apply equally to all people regardless of their background becomes a cornerstone of later legal systems. History will remember you as Genghis Khan, the great conqueror, the founder of the largest land empire in human history. But beneath the legend lies a more complex figure, a man shaped by hardship, driven by vision, and constrained by the limitations of his time and culture. Your life story reveals the personal costs of greatness and the human dimensions of historical achievement. The boy who was born, clutching a blood clot, grew into a man who spilled blood across continents. But he never forgot the lessons of his childhood. The experience of poverty, captivity, and betrayal shaped your understanding of power and your determination to create a world where such injustices could not occur. Your cruelty toward enemies was matched by your loyalty to followers, your harsh justice by your protection of the innocent. Your relationship with your family remained central to your identity throughout your life. Bertie, rescued from captivity, became not just your wife, but your closest advisor and confidant. Your sons, groomed from childhood for leadership, inherited not just your empire but your values and vision. Your mother, who taught you to survive in the wilderness, lived to see you become the most powerful man in the world. The steps that shaped your character remained your spiritual home, even as your empire encompassed vast cities and agricultural regions. You never lost your connection to the nomadic way of life, the values of mobility, adaptability, and self-reliance that defined Mongol culture. Your greatest palaces were still tents, your most trusted advisors still shamans, your deepest loyalties still to the sky and the grass. Your vision of world unity, though achieved through conquest, reflected a genuine belief in the possibility of a peaceful world governed by just laws. The empire you created, for all its violence and instability, represented an attempt to transcend the tribal divisions and cultural barriers that had defined human civilization. Your legacy is not just conquest, but the first attempt to create a truly global political system. The man who began life as Temujin, son of a minor tribal chief, ended it as Genghis Khan, ruler of the world. But the essential person remained unchanged, a pragmatic leader who adapted to circumstances, a loyal friend who never forgot those who helped him, and a visionary who dreamed of a world united under the eternal blue sky. As you lie on your deathbed, surrounded by your sons and closest followers, your thoughts turn to the sky that has watched over your entire life. The same blue dome that stretched over your childhood now covers an empire that spans continents. You've kept faith with the ancient Mongol belief that the sky is the ultimate judge of human actions. that those who live with courage and honor will be rewarded with victory and remembrance. Your body will be buried in secret, somewhere in the Mongolian steppes where you first learned to ride and fight. No monument will mark your grave, no city will bear your name. But your true monument is the empire you've built, the millions of people who now live under laws you established, the trade routes you protected, the cultural exchanges you facilitated. The shamans who attend your final moments speak of the eternal cycle of life and death, of how great leaders become part of the sky itself, watching over their people for all time. Whether you believe these ancient teachings or not, you've lived as if they were true, conducting yourself with the dignity and responsibility that befits one chosen by heaven. Your sons will inherit pieces of your empire, but none will inherit your complete vision. The unity you impose through strength will gradually fragment as your successors pursue their own ambitions. But the changes you initiated will endure, nigh to the connections between East and West, the precedents for religious tolerance, the demonstration that nomadic peoples can shape world history. The boy who was born Temujin dies as Genghis Khan, but the man who lived between those names was something more complex. A product of his time, who transcended its limitations, a conqueror who dreamed of peace, a nomad who built an empire that outlasted the greatest cities of his age. Your life was a bridge between the ancient world of tribal warfare and the medieval world of global empire. The eternal blue sky that watched over your birth will watch over your death, and it will continue to stretch over the steppes long after your empire has faded into memory. But somewhere in those vast spaces, the spirit of the great Khan will endure, inspiring future generations to dream of unity, to fight for justice, and to remember that even the mightiest walls cannot contain the hearts of those who are truly free. The wind carries your final breath across the grasslands, where you learnt to be a man, where you built your first following, where you dreamed of conquest and achieved it. The same wind will carry your legend to distant lands, where storytellers will speak of the great Khan who united the world, who rode from the ends of the earth to the ends of the earth, who proved that nothing is impossible for those who have the courage to attempt it. And in the silence that follows, the eternal blue sky continues its watch, infinite and unchanging, holding within its depths the memory of a man who dared to dream of ruling the world and made that dream reality. The boy who clutched a blood clot in his tiny fist grew up to hold the entire world in his hands, and though both the boy and the man are gone, their achievement echoes still in the whisper of wind across the steppes, in the cry of eagles soaring toward the sun, in the eternal blue sky that remembers all and forgives nothing. Your story ends where it began, under the vast dome of heaven, in the land of your fathers, where the grass grows forever and the horses run free. You lived as a Mongol, you died as a Mongol, and history will remember you as the greatest of all Mongols. The man who made the world acknowledge that the children of the steppes could rule the earth. The eternal blue sky has claimed you at last, and you have become part of the legend that will outlast empires, outlast cities, outlast everything except the sky itself. Sleep well, great Khan. Your work is done, your empire secured, your name immortal. The boy who was born in a felt tent has become the man who will be remembered until the end of time. The eternal blue sky watches over you still, as it watched over your first breath and your last, as it will watch over the steppes long after the last echo of your name has faded into the wind that carries all things away and brings all things home. Your death creates a crisis that tests everything you've built. The empire spans continents, but it's held together by personal loyalty to you rather than institutional structures. Your sons gather around your deathbed, but even they are uncertain about how to proceed. The succession has been planned, but planning and reality are different things on the steps. The first decision is how to handle your death itself. Mongol tradition requires that a great Khan's passing be announced immediately, with ceremonies of mourning and transition, but practical considerations argue for secrecy. Your armies are still in the field, your enemies are watching for signs of weakness, and your empire is too vast to be governed during a prolonged succession crisis. Your closest advisors make the decision to conceal your death until the immediate military and political situation can be stabilized. Your body is prepared according to ancient customs, but the usual public ceremonies are replaced by private rituals attended only by your most trusted followers. The official story is that you're ill but recovering, buying time for your heirs to consolidate their positions. The location of your burial becomes one of history's greatest mysteries. According to your wishes, your body is taken to a sacred site in the Mongolian steppes, somewhere near the place of your birth. The exact location is known only to a handful of your most loyal followers, and they carry the secret to their own graves. Some say you're buried beneath a river that was diverted to flow over your tomb. Others that you rest in a hidden valley that only the spirits can find. The funeral procession itself becomes the stuff of legend. Your body is carried in a cart drawn by your favorite horses, escorted by a guard of your most trusted warriors. According to some accounts, everyone who encounters the procession is killed to preserve the secret of your burial site. Whether this is true or merely a story designed to discourage grave robbers, the result is the same fate. Your final resting place remains hidden. The burial ceremony, conducted in absolute secrecy, follows ancient Mongol traditions. Your body is placed in a wooden casket, along with weapons, gold, and personal items that will serve you in the afterlife. Your favorite horses are sacrificed so that you can ride them in the spirit world. The shamans perform rituals to ensure your safe passage to the realm of your ancestors. But even as your body is laid to rest, your spirit begins its transformation into legend. The warriors who participated in the burial scatter across the empire, carrying with them fragments of the story that will eventually coalesce into the myths and legends that surround your death. The secret burial becomes a symbol of your continuing power. Even in death, you remain mysterious and untouchable. The news of your death, when it's finally announced, creates exactly the crisis your advisors feared. Oji, your chosen heir, faces immediate challenges from nobles who question his legitimacy, generals who prefer other candidates, and rival claimants who see opportunity in the moment of transition. The empire you built through personal charisma and military success must now survive without you. The first challenge comes from your own family. Jochi, your eldest son, has died before you, but his sons claim that their father's seniority should transfer to them. Chagatai, your second son, argues that his military record makes him the natural leader. Tului, your youngest, commands the loyalty of the traditional Mongol heartland and controls the largest military force. The very success of your family in producing capable leaders creates problems for unified succession. Oji's supporters argue that your choice should be respected, that the empire needs stability rather than another civil war. They point to his administrative skills, his diplomatic abilities, and his track record of successful governance in the territories already under his control. But these very qualities, the skills of a peacetime administrator, make some warriors question whether he can maintain the military dominance that holds the empire together. The Kurultai that formally elects Ojide as Great Khan is a masterpiece of political theater and careful manipulation. Your widow, Berta, plays a crucial role in legitimizing the succession. speaking of your deathbed wishes and the dreams that foretold Ogeday's destiny. The shamans perform rituals that seem to confirm divine approval of the choice. Your most trusted generals pledge their loyalty, creating momentum that makes opposition difficult. But the real key to successful succession is Ogeday's handling of his brothers and potential rivals. Rather than eliminating them, he incorporates them into his government, giving them significant roles that satisfy their ambitions while keeping them loyal to the dynasty. Chagatai becomes the guardian of the Yasa, your legal code, while Tolui commands the central army. It's a solution that maintains family unity while distributing power. The succession establishes precedents that will govern the empire for generations. The principle that the great Khan is elected by the Kurultai, not simply inherited, creates a system that balances traditional Mongol democracy with imperial necessity. Ords, imperial necessity. The practice of incorporating potential rivals into the government becomes a standard technique for managing succession crises. Under Ogeday's rule, the empire continues to expand, fulfilling the dreams of world conquest that you articulated but didn't live to complete. The campaigns you planned are executed by your sons and generals, extending Mongol power into Europe, the Middle East, and southern China. Your military innovations and organizational systems prove their worth in the hands of the next generation. The invasion of Europe unfolds exactly as you envisioned. Mongol armies sweep across the Russian steppes, overwhelming the scattered principalities that attempt to resist. The Battle of Kalka River demonstrates the effectiveness of your tactical innovations against European heavy cavalry. Cities fall like dominoes as local defenders prove incapable of coordinating effective resistance against your mobile forces. The conquest of Kiev, the greatest city in Eastern Europe, showcases the siege techniques your engineers developed during the Chinese campaigns. The city's massive walls, considered impregnable by local standards, are breached by sophisticated artillery and undermined by systematic sapping. The fall of Kiev sends shockwaves across Europe, alerting distant kingdoms to the reality of the Mongol threat. Your armies penetrate deep into Poland and Hungary, winning decisive victories that eliminate organized resistance. The Battle of Moshi, where your forces destroy the Hungarian army, demonstrates the continued effectiveness of your military system under new leadership. European chroniclers describe the Mongol advance as a natural disaster, an unstoppable force that sweeps away everything in its path. The death of Ogeday in 1241 suddenly halts the European campaign just as Mongol forces are preparing to invade Western Europe. Your grandson Batu, commanding the Western armies, receives word of the Great Khan's death and immediately returns to Mongolia to participate in the succession. The retreat saves Europe from conquest, but also demonstrates the continuing importance of unified leadership in maintaining the empire. The conquest of the Song dynasty in southern China represents the completion of your vision of Chinese unification. The campaign, lasting decades, tests every aspect of your military and administrative systems. Your successors must adapt traditional Mongol tactics to the challenges of siege warfare, naval combat, and governing vast agricultural populations. The eventual victory creates the Yuan dynasty, making your descendants the rulers of the world's most populous nation. The empire you founded becomes the foundation for an unprecedented period of peace and prosperity across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, creates conditions for cultural and economic exchange that transform the medieval world. Your vision of a unified world under Mongol rule, achieved through conquest, paradoxically creates the conditions for civilization to flourish. The trade routes you established and protected become the arteries of the first global economy. The Silk Road reaches its peak under your successors, carrying not just goods but ideas, technologies, and artistic styles across continents. Merchants can travel from Venice to Beijing under the protection of a single legal system, using standardized weights and measures, and relying on the postal system you created for communication. The religious tolerance you practiced becomes a defining characteristic of Mongol rule. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and traditional shamans serve side by side in your government, creating a model of pluralistic administration that influences later empires. The court of the Great Khan becomes a center of theological debate and cultural exchange, where representatives of different faiths can discuss their beliefs without fear of persecution. The legal system you established, the Yasa, provides a framework for governing the diverse populations of your empire. Its emphasis on merit, loyalty, and uniform justice creates new standards for governance that outlast your dynasty. The principle that law should apply equally to all people regardless of their background becomes a cornerstone of later legal systems throughout Eurasia. Your postal system, the Yam, revolutionizes communication across your empire. Messages can travel from one end of your domains to the other in weeks rather than months, allowing for coordinated administration of vast territories. The system becomes a model for later communication networks and demonstrates the practical benefits of unified imperial administration. The cultural exchanges facilitated by your empire transform art, architecture, and literature across Eurasia. Chinese artistic techniques influence Persian miniature painting. Islamic geometric patterns appear in European decorative arts, and European glassmaking technology spreads to Asia. The fusion of different cultural traditions creates new forms of artistic expression, that reflect the cosmopolitan nature of your empire. Holshi, the Yuan dynasty, founded by your grandson Kublai Khan, represents the culmination of your vision of Chinese conquest. The Mongol rulers of China adapt your governmental systems to the needs of a sedentary, agricultural civilization, while maintaining the essential characteristics of Mongol rule. The result is a unique form of government that combines nomadic flexibility with bureaucratic efficiency. Kublai Khan's establishment of his capital at Beijing creates a new center of world power that rivals any city in medieval civilization. The city becomes a cosmopolitan metropolis, where Mongols, Chinese, Muslims, and Europeans interact in a complex web of cultural exchange. The court of the Great Khan becomes legendary for its wealth, sophistication, and openness to foreign influences. The Mongol administration of China demonstrates the adaptability of your governmental systems. Traditional Chinese bureaucracy is preserved, but is overseen by Mongol nobles who ensure loyalty to the dynasty. The examination system continues to select officials based on merit, but ultimate authority remains with your descendants. The result is a government that combines the best features of both traditions. The economic policies implemented by your successors in China reflect your emphasis on trade and commerce. The Grand Canal is extended and improved, connecting the agricultural regions of the south with the political centers of the north. Paper money is introduced on a large scale, facilitating trade and demonstrating the sophisticated financial systems that develop under Mongol rule. The cultural flowering that occurs during the Yuan dynasty demonstrates the benefits of your policy of religious and cultural tolerance. Chinese literature, art, and philosophy flourish under Mongol patronage, while foreign influences enrich traditional Chinese culture. The period sees the development of new forms of drama, poetry, and painting that reflect the cosmopolitan nature of the empire. The eventual fall of the Yuan dynasty in 1368 marks the end of Mongol rule in China, but the influence of your legacy continues. The governmental systems established by your successors influence later Chinese dynasties, and the cultural exchanges facilitated by Mongol rule permanently transform Chinese civilization. The memory of the Great Khan becomes part of Chinese historical consciousness, representing both the trauma of conquest and the benefits of unified rule. The Mongol conquest of the Islamic world, beginning with your destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire, represents one of the most dramatic transformations in medieval history. The Ilkhanate, established by your grandson Hulagu, adapts your governmental systems to the needs of a sophisticated urban civilization, while maintaining the essential characteristics of Mongol rule. The destruction of Baghdad in 1258, ordered by Hulagu, eliminates the Abbasid Caliphate and ends the symbolic unity of the Islamic world. The event shocks the Muslim world and creates a power vacuum that your descendants fill with their own vision of Islamic governance. The Mongol rulers of Persia and Iraq become the protectors of Islam, while maintaining their own cultural identity. The conversion of the Ilkhans to Islam, beginning with Ghazan Khan in 1295, represents the ultimate adaptation of Mongol rule to local conditions. The conversion doesn't eliminate Mongol identity, but rather creates a new synthesis that combines Islamic law with Mongol administrative practices. The result is a unique form of Islamic government that influences the development of later Muslim states. The architectural achievements of the Ilkhanate demonstrate the creative potential of cultural synthesis under Mongol rule. The tomb of Ogiya II at Sultaniya represents one of the masterpieces of Islamic architecture, combining traditional Persian techniques with innovations developed under Mongol patronage. The building exemplifies the way your empire facilitates cultural exchange and artistic innovation. The economic policies of the Ilkhanate reflect your emphasis on trade and commerce. The Mongol rulers of Persia maintain and expand the trade routes that connect Asia with Europe, making their territories a crucial link in the global economy. The development of new financial instruments and trading practices demonstrates the sophisticated economic systems that develop under Mongol rule. The eventual fragmentation of the Ilkhanate in the 14th century marks the end of unified Mongol rule in the Islamic world, but the influence of your legacy continues. The governmental systems established by your successors influence later Islamic dynasties, and the cultural exchanges facilitated by Mongol rule permanently transform Islamic civilization. The memory of the Mongol conquest becomes part of Islamic historical consciousness, representing both destruction and renewal. The Mongol invasions of Europe, though ultimately incomplete, have a profound impact on European civilization. The sudden appearance of your armies on the borders of Christendom forces European rulers to confront the reality of a wider world and their own limitations. The trauma of the Mongol invasions becomes a defining moment in European historical consciousness. The initial European response to the Mongol threat is one of terror and incomprehension. Chronicles describe your armies as harbingers of the apocalypse, sent by God to punish Christian sins. The failure of traditional military tactics against Mongol forces creates a crisis of confidence that forces European nobles to reconsider their assumptions about warfare and governance. The diplomatic contacts established between your empire and European kingdoms create new possibilities for cultural exchange. The missions of John of Plano Carpini and William of Rubruck to the court of the Great Khan provide Europeans with their first detailed accounts of the Mongol Empire. These reports, widely circulated, transform European understanding of the world beyond their borders. The influx of Asian goods transforms European markets and creates demand for luxury items that can only be obtained through long-distance trade. The development of new financial instruments and trading practices demonstrates the impact of Mongol rule on European economic development. The military innovations developed during the Mongol invasions influence European warfare for centuries. The use of composite bows, siege engines, and coordinated cavalry tactics forces European armies to adapt their traditional methods. The lessons learned from fighting Mongol forces contribute to the military revolution that transforms European warfare in the later medieval period. The memory of the Mongol invasions becomes part of European cultural consciousness, influencing literature, art, and political thought. The image of the Mongol warrior becomes a symbol of exotic danger and untamed power that persists in European imagination long after the actual threat has passed. Your legacy in Europe is one of fear transformed into fascination, of destruction that ultimately leads to cultural enrichment. The military innovations you pioneered during your campaigns revolutionize warfare across Eurasia and influence military thinking for centuries to come. Your emphasis on mobility, coordination, and psychological warfare transforms the nature of medieval combat and creates new standards for military organization and tactics. The decimal system you established for organizing your armies becomes a model for later military reforms. The clear chain of command, standardized unit sizes, and systematic training methods you developed prove their effectiveness in campaigns across diverse terrain and against different types of enemies. European, Chinese, and Islamic armies all adopt variations of your organizational principles. The siege techniques developed by your engineers represent a revolutionary advance in military technology. The combination of Chinese gunpowder weapons, Islamic engineering knowledge, and European metalworking skills creates siege engines of unprecedented effectiveness. The ability to breach supposedly impregnable fortifications transforms the nature of warfare and makes traditional defensive strategies obsolete. The psychological warfare tactics you employ become a standard feature of military campaigns. The systematic use of terror, propaganda, and intelligence gathering creates a new dimension of warfare that extends beyond simple physical combat. The reputation of Mongol ruthlessness becomes a weapon in itself, often causing enemies to surrender without fighting. The logistical systems you develop to supply armies operating across vast distances represent a crucial innovation in military organization. The ability to maintain large forces in the field for extended periods, supported by efficient supply lines and communication networks, makes possible the kind of sustained campaigns that create empires rather than merely winning battles. The integration of different military traditions within your army creates new tactical possibilities. The combination of Chinese siege techniques, Islamic engineering knowledge, and European metalworking skills produces military capabilities that exceed what any single tradition could achieve. The integration of different military traditions within your army creates new tactical possibilities. The integration of different military traditions within your army creates new tactical possibilities. This synthesis becomes a model for later military development and demonstrates the benefits of cultural exchange. The empire you established becomes a catalyst for scientific and technological exchange that transforms medieval civilization. The Pax Mongolica creates conditions for the transmission of knowledge across cultural boundaries, facilitating innovations that might otherwise have remained localized. Your policy of religious and cultural tolerance extends to scientific inquiry, creating an environment where different traditions can interact and influence each other. The astronomical observations conducted at the court of your successors represent a fusion of Chinese, Islamic, and European traditions. The observatory built by Nasser al-Din al-Tusi at Maracay becomes a center of astronomical research that influences later developments in both Islamic and European astronomy. The accurate star catalogues and mathematical models developed there contribute to the eventual development of heliocentric theory. The medical knowledge exchanged throughout your empire creates new possibilities for treating disease and understanding human anatomy. Chinese acupuncture techniques spread westward, while Islamic surgical procedures and European herbal remedies travel eastward. The synthesis of different medical traditions creates a more comprehensive understanding of health and disease than any single tradition could achieve. The printing technology developed in China spreads throughout your empire, though its full impact won't be felt until later centuries. The ability to reproduce texts accurately and efficiently has profound implications for education, administration, and cultural development. The spread of printing technology under Mongol rule lays the foundation for the information revolution that transforms later medieval civilization. The gunpowder weapons that play a crucial role in your military success represent one of the most significant technological transfers in history. The Chinese invention of gunpowder, combined with Islamic metallurgy and European engineering, creates new types of weapons that transform warfare. The spread of gunpowder technology throughout your empire has profound implications for military and political development. The navigational techniques developed during the Mongol period facilitate the expansion of trade and exploration. The combination of Chinese compass technology, Islamic astronomical knowledge, and European cartography creates new possibilities for long-distance navigation. These developments contribute to the age of exploration that transforms the world in later centuries. The cultural exchanges facilitated by your empire create new forms of literary and artistic expression that reflect the cosmopolitan nature of Mongol rule. The interaction between different cultural traditions produces innovations in poetry, painting, architecture, and music that demonstrate the creative potential of cultural synthesis. The Persian miniature paintings produced during the Ilkhanate period represent a fusion of Chinese, Islamic, and European artistic traditions. The detailed landscapes, sophisticated use of perspective, and rich color palettes demonstrate the way artistic techniques spread throughout your empire. These works become models for later Persian and Turkish art and influence the development of miniature painting traditions. The architectural achievements of the Mongol period demonstrate the creative potential of cultural synthesis. The combination of Chinese structural techniques, Islamic decorative traditions, and local building materials creates new architectural styles that reflect the cosmopolitan nature of your empire. Buildings like the Tomb of Og-II at Sultaniya exemplify this synthesis and become models for later architectural development. The literary works produced under Mongol patronage reflect the cultural diversity of your empire, with the poetry of Rumi, the histories of Rashid al-Din, and the travel accounts of Marco Polo, all demonstrate the way different cultural traditions interact and influence each other. These works become classics of world literature and provide invaluable insights into the medieval world. The musical traditions that develop during the Mongol period represent a fusion of different cultural influences. The combination of Chinese instruments, Islamic musical theory, and European harmonic concepts creates new forms of musical expression that reflect the cosmopolitan nature of your empire. These innovations influence the development of musical traditions throughout Eurasia. The decorative arts produced during the Mongol period demonstrate the high level of craftsmanship achieved through cultural exchange. The combination of Chinese techniques, Islamic designs, and European materials creates objects of extraordinary beauty and sophistication. These works become treasured possessions of rulers and collectors throughout the medieval world. The empire you created through personal charisma and military genius faces inevitable challenges as it passes to succeeding generations. The very size that makes it impressive also makes it difficult to govern, and the cultural diversity that enriches it also creates centrifugal forces that threaten unity. The gradual fragmentation of your empire demonstrates both the achievements and limitations of medieval imperial systems. The succession crises that periodically rock your empire reveal the fundamental weakness of personal rule. Each transition creates opportunities for ambitious nobles to challenge central authority, and the vast distances involved make it difficult to respond quickly to rebellions. The Kurultai system, designed to ensure legitimate succession, becomes a source of instability as different factions compete for influence. The adoption of local religions and cultures by your successors, while demonstrating adaptability, also weakens the bonds that hold the empire together. As the Ilkhans become Muslims, the Yuan emperors adopt Chinese customs, and the Golden Horde converts to Islam, the unity of the Mongol world begins to fracture. The common identity that you forged through conquest gradually gives way to regional identities that reflect local conditions. The economic challenges of maintaining such a vast empire become increasingly apparent as the initial wealth from conquest is exhausted. The cost of administration, military maintenance, and ceremonial display strains the imperial treasury, forcing your successors to rely increasingly on taxation and tribute. The economic burden of empire eventually exceeds its benefits, creating conditions for decline. The military innovations that gave your empire its initial advantage are gradually adopted by your enemies, reducing the tactical superiority that made conquest possible. The development of new defensive techniques, the spread of gunpowder weapons, and the adaptation of European military organization to Asian conditions create a more balanced military situation that makes further expansion difficult. The Black Death, spreading along the trade routes your empire created, devastates populations throughout Eurasia and demonstrates the vulnerability of interconnected civilizations. The pandemic that kills millions of people across your domains weakens the demographic foundation of imperial power and contributes to the economic and military decline of your successor states. By the late 14th century, the unified empire you created has fragmented into competing successor states, each claiming to represent the legitimate continuation of your legacy. The Yuan dynasty falls to the Ming in China, the Ilkhanate dissolves into warring factions in Persia, and the Golden Horde splits into separate khanates. The dream of world unity under Mongol rule has ended, but the impact of your achievements continues to resonate. The memory of your conquests becomes part of the historical consciousness of every civilization you touched. In China, you're remembered as the founder of the Yuan dynasty, a foreign conqueror who nevertheless contributed to Chinese development. In the Islamic world, you're seen as both destroyer and creator, the conqueror who ended the Abbasid Caliphate, but also facilitated cultural renaissance. In Europe, you remain the ultimate symbol of nomadic power and exotic danger. The governmental systems you established continue to influence political development long after your empire's fragmentation, while the administrative techniques developed under Mongol rule are adapted by later dynasties, and the legal principles enshrined in the Yasa continue to influence jurisprudence. The precedent of religious tolerance you established becomes a model for later rulers dealing with diverse populations. The trade networks you created and protected continue to function even as political unity collapses. The commercial connections established during the Pax Mongoliaca survive the fall of your empire and provide the foundation for the global economy that emerges in later centuries. The cultural exchanges facilitated by Mongol rule have permanent effects that transcend political boundaries. The military innovations you pioneered continue to influence warfare long after your armies have been defeated. The tactical principles you developed are studied and adapted by military theorists throughout history, and the organizational methods you created become standard features of professional armies. Your legacy in military affairs extends far beyond your lifetime and continues to influence military thinking today. The legend of Genghis Khan, the great conqueror, becomes part of world mythology, inspiring later conquerors and influencing popular culture. The story of the boy who became the ruler of the world resonates across cultures and centuries, representing the ultimate example of personal achievement and imperial ambition. Your name becomes synonymous with conquest, power, and the transformation of the world through military genius. As the centuries pass and the last echoes of your empire fade into history, the significance of your achievements becomes clearer. You didn't just conquer territory or accumulate wealth, you fundamentally changed the course of human civilization. The world after Genghis Khan was different from the world before him, connected in ways that had never been possible, and unified under concepts that transcended traditional boundaries. The genetic legacy you left behind is as vast as your territorial conquests. Modern DNA research suggests that millions of people across Asia carry genes that can be traced back to you and your immediate family. The biological impact of your conquests mirrors their cultural and political effects, creating connections that span continents and centuries. The historical example you established continues to influence leaders and thinkers throughout subsequent history. Napoleon studied your campaigns, modern military strategists analyze your tactics, and political theorists examine your methods of governance. The precedents you set for military organization, imperial administration, and cultural integration continue to provide lessons for those who seek to understand power and leadership. The cultural synthesis you facilitated through conquest and trade creates lasting changes in art, literature, science, and technology. The exchange of ideas and techniques across your empire accelerates human development and creates innovations that might otherwise have taken centuries to achieve. The Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and the age of exploration all build upon foundations laid during the Mongol period. The concept of world unity that you embodied through conquest becomes a persistent theme in human thought. The idea that all peoples can be united under a single system of government, law, and culture continues to influence political philosophy and international relations. Your empire provides both a model and a warning for later attempts at global unification. The environmental impact of your conquests, largely invisible to medieval observers, becomes apparent to modern historians. The depopulation caused by your campaigns allows forests to regrow and reduces agricultural pressure on marginal lands. The unintended ecological consequences of your military actions demonstrate the far-reaching effects of historical events. The archaeological evidence of your empire continues to be discovered and studied by modern scholars. Excavations across Eurasia reveal the material culture of the Mongol period, providing insights into daily life, economic systems, and cultural practices. The physical remains of your empire offer tangible connections to a vanished world and help modern people understand the reality behind the legends. The ultimate judgment of your legacy depends on perspective and values. To some, you remain the greatest conqueror in history, the military genius who created the largest land empire the world has ever seen. To others, you're a destroyer of civilizations responsible for the deaths of millions and the devastation of entire regions. The complexity of your character and achievements ensures that debates about your significance will continue as long as people study history. But perhaps the most important aspect of your legacy is the demonstration that individuals can change the course of history. Hol, the boy born in a felt tent on the Mongolian steppes, grew up to reshape the world through force of will. Hol's military genius and political vision. Your life proves that greatness is not determined by birth or circumstances, but by the courage to dream impossible dreams and the determination to make them reality. The eternal blue sky that watched over your birth and death continues to stretch over the steppes where your story began. The grass still grows in the valleys where you learnt to ride. The wind still carries the scent of wild flowers across the plains where you first dreamed of conquest. The physical world you knew has changed little, but the human world you created has vanished completely, leaving only memories, legends, and the knowledge that once, long ago, a man from the steppes held the entire world in his hands. And so your story ends where it began, under the vast dome of heaven, in the silence of the grasslands, where the eternal blue sky remembers all things and judges all things according to laws older than history. You lived as a man, you died as a legend, and you will be remembered as long as human beings tell stories about courage, ambition, and the endless possibility of change. The boy who clutched a blood clot in his tiny fist grew up to grasp the world itself, and though both the boy and the world have passed away, the story of what one person can achieve continues to inspire and challenge all who hear it. Sleep well, great Khan, beneath the eternal blue sky that has claimed you at last. Your empire has fallen, your armies have crumbled to dust, your cities have been abandoned by time, but your name lives on, carried by the wind that blows across the steppes, whispered in the legends that mothers tell their children, carved into the memory of humanity itself. You are Genghis Khan, the great conqueror, the man who made the world tremble, and then made it whole. The eternal blue sky remembers, and so do we.